Elizabethan poetry. The Elizabethan age was predominantly a period of imagination. Poets and dramatists began to experiment, fresh fields and pastures new. This period may be said to be the romantic period of the Elizabethans. With the dawn of Renaissance, a gleam of hope was produced in the poetically barren land of England. Wyatt and Surrey were the earliest pioneers of who revived the flagging interest in poetry by introducing the sonnet and lyric in English poetry. They paved the way for later advancement in the hands of Sidney Spencer, Marlowe, and Shakespeare. Sir Thomas Wyatt. Wyatt was the first poet who introduced the sonnet based on the model of Petrarch in English poetry. His 96 love poems were published in Tottle's Miscellany. His 31 sonnets are highly praiseworthy. In these sonnets, we hear for the first time the fervent voice of the poet's heart. Personal note in poetry was introduced by this poet, Earl of Surrey. His works consist of sonnets and poems in various meters, notable for their grace and finish. He shared with Wyatt the credit of bringing sonnet from Italy into England, but he was an innovator. He was the first to give to the sonnets into purely English form. This form was later on perfected by William Shakespeare. That is why it is called by the name of Shakespearean sonnet or English sonnet. It is made up of three quatrains with different rhymes followed by a couplet, but his chief title to fame his chief title to fame is his introduction of blank verse. In his translation of Virgin's Aeneid, this innovation was typical of the Renaissance. His poems and sonnets appeared in Tuttle's Miscellany. Thomas Watson was the earliest Elizabethan to make a reputation as a sonneteer. Sir Philip Sidney entered the field very soon after Watson set foot there. He is a prince among Elizabethan lyric poets and sonnetiers. His collection of sonnets is known by the general title of Astrophel and Stella. The poet, under the name of Astrophel, professes to narrate the cause of his passion for a lady to whom he gives the name of Stella. He led the way to a great outburst of sonneteering. Then sonneteering became an universal habit, a conventional recreation. Spencer. After the publication of Sidney's sonnets, there was a great outburst of sonnet writing. Among them was Spencer, who bestowed on his sequence of 88 sonnets by the Italian name of Amoretti. His first important poem is The Shepherd's Calendar. The publication of this poem gained him the title of the new poet and marks the beginning of the great age of Elizabethan poetry. Promethalamion and Epithalamion are the two very important poems of Spenser. Henry Constable is one of the most important sonneteer of his time. His collection of sonnets is known as Dena. He drank deep of Franco-Italian wells to give his muse full liberty and expansion. Samuel Daniel, his poetry is essentially the poetry of reflection rather than of passion. imagination does not kindle his verse. He introduces prose quality in verse. His most important historical poem is the Civil Wars. He has written he has written fine sonnets also. He named his sonnet sequence as Delia. Michael Drayton, he is a typical Elizabethan poet. He is a versatile singer, practicing the sonnet, the ballad, the fairy poetry, and long poems in history. His most important historical poem is The Baron's Wars. His longest poem is Polyovian, but his most delightful work is the fairy poem Nymphadia. This poem deals with the love adventure of Titania and Oberon. His well known sonnet sequence is Idea. Marlowe, Christopher Marlowe was one of the greatest poets of the world whose work was cast by accident into the imperfect mold of drama. Apart from poetic drama, he started writing a narrative poem entitled Hero and Leander, which has a rare freshness and sensitive beauty. His famous lyric, Passionate Shepherd, shows what he could do in the realm of lyrical poetry. Shakespeare, Shakespeare is one of the greatest poets of not only of Elizabethan age but also of all ages. He has written a number of songs and lyrics, but most of them went into drama. He was a great sonneteer. His sonnets are 154 in number. They are all composed in the English form of the sonnet. The entire collection falls into two groups. The first group consists of a series of cryptic references to his friendship with a youth who may be most probably the mysterious Mr. W.H. The second group consists of sonnets which were addressed to his mistress, a black beauty, in the depth, breadth, and persistency of their passion, and above all, in their mastery of a rich and sensuous phraseology, they are unique. Wordsworth paid tribute to his sonnets in the following verse. With the same key, Shakespeare unlocked his heart. Really, Shakespeare breathed into the sonnet a lyrical melody and a meditative energy which no writer of any country has surpassed. Thomas Campion, his chief claim to fame lies in his attractive lyrics. His best known collections of songs are A Book of Songs of Mourning, the two books of Iris.